Good morning or afternoon, players, gamers, and critters! I am Master Mimic, and welcome back to Roaring D20s, my little show where I sit here and talk about all things D&D related, including, wait for it, Critical Role. That's right, I thought I'd dedicate today's episode to the monolithic return of by far the biggest D&D show you'll find anywhere in the media. I mean, these guys have gone on to conquer D&D podcasts. They gone on to conquer basically Thursday night on YouTube, and, well, pretty soon they're going on to conquer the world of cartoons. So, I'm basically just going to sit here and talk about my thoughts on Critical Role because, I mean, like any other gamer, I've obviously been following these guys for a while. I mean, obviously not as much as some because, I was actually introduced pretty late into their first campaign. So, anyway, let's get started. For some of those who don't know, Critical Role is a show that began where basically a bunch of voice actors, largely from Funimation, and quite a few of them also do video game voiceovers, just get together and they play Dungeons & Dragons. The GM is Matthew Mercer, the saintly Matthew Mercer. And let's see, there is Ashley Johnson, Laura Bailey, Travis Willingham, Liam O'Brien, Marisha Ray, Sam Riegel, Taliesin Jaffe, and a whole bunch of other stars that they bring on, guests that, might join them for a session or two. Gosh, I remember when I was first introduced to these guys, it was actually thanks to Roth that I even became acquainted with them. You see, one of my greatest ambitions is I want to be a voice actor. And so I actually ended up following a lot of these people. I mean, Travis Willingham, for example, he's a huge inspiration for me. Matthew Mercer, maybe a little on in life, but, him too. Liam O'Brien, especially. After all, he voice acts Illidan Stormrage from Warcraft, who's one of my favorite characters from that series. And Liam O'Brien also played War in the Darksiders video games, another franchise I am a particularly big fan of. So when Roth then tells me, hey, do you know that all three of those guys are actually part of a D&D group? My jaw dropped. It was like that part in Parks and Recreation when I believe it's Mona Lisa finds out that Diddy is on Instagram, I think it is, or something like that, and she calls, what did everyone tell me, you jagweeds? Like that. That was kind of how I was. So I tuned in, and I found out they were actually, I think they were on like 100 and something. They were far into their first campaign. And obviously I jumped back to episode 1, and I tried getting caught up, which is a Herculean task, I'll tell you what. Because the thing about Critical Role's episodes is each one is at least 4 hours long. I think they vary between 4 and 5. Because, yeah, they just basically just sit there and play D&D. And, yeah, they will take a few breaks. Like, I would even say about an hour of that runtime is probably dedicated to ads. Obviously, they need to, they've been sponsored, and they also want to advertise other shows on Geek and Sundry. I think back when they were a part of it, I don't know if Critical Role still is a part of Geek and Sundry. I am subscribed to both of them on YouTube, and I've seen Critical Role start its own channel with all its episodes on there, and Geek and Sundry just has kind of gone its own way. Like, I don't know if they split up or whatever. Like, I don't know if this is, like a Rooster Teeth and Death Battle type situation. But I didn't really look too deep into that. So, I suppose one thing I could talk about is, the cast. So, it just, again, for those who, either don't know what this series is, or for those tuning in to, hear my opinions, here we go. DM, the saintly Matthew Mercer. I find he is an excellent person, both, in front of the screen and behind it. He's one of those people who, just seeing him in conventions, seeing him talk to fans, you just get this impression that he's a guy you could just sit down and have a beer with, you know? Like, there would be no change of whatsoever of his character. You could just sit down, hey, dude, you want a blue moon? Sure, yeah, you know. And that's, actually, I want to say that's probably my main way to gauge how much I like a person, is if I wouldn't mind having a beer with them. It's a little, I know, it's a little weird, but hey, that's how I met Little Batty. So Matthew Mercer, he's been the DM since day one. Even before they even started filming their game sessions, he was always the one behind the screen. And from what I've witnessed, he is what a lot of GMs these days strive to be. I would agree to that, because I've even incorporated some of his own style into my own, games. I don't directly, I guess I don't directly rip him off, but okay, like one of the things he does to try and get the players really excited. So one, he is very detailed when he goes about things, as a voice actor, and he could pick up voices. Like, I've never seen NPCs with such a wide variety of voices, and that's something that I strive to do as well. If I don't do it well enough, I usually end up without a voice at the end of the night, but that's okay. So that's one thing I try to do. I try to give personalities and, unique characteristics to all of my NPCs. I try not to make them cardboard cutouts, because that's how Matthew Mercer does it. He also does a really interesting dynamic where if they're in combat and someone does the final killing blow, he'll stop, smile at the person, and say, "How do you want to do this?" When he does this compels the person who did the killing blow to essentially come up with like a fatality, like especially if Grog does, a killing, like when he, I guess I should avoid spoilers on this, just in case there are people listening who have never witnessed Critical Role. But Grog especially does a lot of these, how do you want to do this moments fantastically. And I've started doing that with my own games, to the point where, if someone among the group thinks they did the killing blow, they'll look at me with a big old smile and say, are you going to ask me how do I want to do this? No, they still have some HP, basically what I was saying, though, is, Matthew Mercer, he's a great person, both as a human being and as a GM. He's so funny. He has so much charisma. I wouldn't mind meeting him someday. And, heck, I wouldn't mind, running a game with him someday. That'd be pretty cool. But going down the list, we'll get to Ashley Johnson. Ashley Johnson plays the cleric Pike. She is a gnome who is devout to Serenre. Pike, I want to say, she starts off the series as a regular, but I want to say about halfway through their second story arc, she essentially becomes more of a cameo kind of character. This is because Ashley Johnson started picking up a lot of work, outside of the show. Obviously, she would go on to do the voice for Ellie for The Last of Us 1 and 2. She even had a little role in the first Avengers movie. For those who don't know, she is the waitress that Captain America saves. And at the end, when they're going through the newsreels, talking about the Avengers, she's the one who says, Captain America saved my life. Like, she's one of those faces that as soon as you see her, like, if she is playing a role in any movie where she's, herself, you're going to notice her like that. It's just, she's so cool. And she's almost, I want to say she's kind of the cutesy person of the group. I mean, the way that especially her and Travis, when Pike and Grog interact, it's just, they're just so freaking adorable. There's a lot of their interactions, and with me with a big old smile on my face, and let's see. Well, since I mentioned him, we'll go over to Travis. So Travis and Ashley, Pike and Grog, their two characters actually do have history together. Grog Strongjaw, he is a Goliath barbarian who was cast out of his herd after he rejected the killing of a gnome, and not only was he beaten to an inch of his life, but then he was abandoned and left for dead. This gnome then brought him back to his home and nursed him back to health, and Pike was revealed to be, this gnome's granddaughter. And ever since, Grog and Pike have this really strong friendship that's gotten them through a lot of dangers. Well, until Pike had to step out because, outside work. So, Grog Strongjaw is by far my favorite character of the whole series. He fits really well with your I would say your stereotypical barbarian. He's dumb, he's big, he talks like this with a very deep voice, and he swings a great battle axe and clad in furs, all that stuff. Grog's catchphrase is "I would like to rage," and that's basically what he says every single time he goes into his rage. But the thing is that I would say yes, it is something of a stereotype, but Grog makes up for this by just having a lot of depth to his character. Yeah, he's not the smartest, and he, like he says, he's all about, ale, fighting, and women. Those are his passions in life. But Travis doesn't let that be the sole reason he exists. That's where he and, Scanlan will go off and have their fun whenever they enter town, but that's just what he does on the side. Grog has a lot of personal backstory too. I mean, he eventually his herd comes back into play. He kind of has to, get his revenge there. But that's kind of one of the ways that I was inspired also by Critical Role. Was here's this character who is essentially the archetype for a barbarian, but the way that Travis plays him and the way that his story goes on, he's not only interesting, but he's also one of the most fascinating characters in the whole show. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a fan of Travis Willingham. I mean, you can't make up the kind of interactions that Grog gets. I mean, he gets into a fist fight with an orc named Kern, and again, it's just a fist fight. But because of the way that Travis plays Grog, the way that he role plays as him, and also from the brilliant GMing from Matthew Mercer, this simple fist fight was one of the most intense early battles in their series, and it's just a fist fight. It's not a life or death situation. They're just beating the crap out of each other to see if they can knock each other unconscious. And it was riveting. I loved it. I could talk about Grog forever, but obviously I want to keep this video, under an hour. So we'll move down to Travis's wife in real life, Laura Bailey. Laura Bailey plays Vexalia, the half-elf ranger. Vex is helped by her bear companion named Trinket, as well as her twin brother, who is a rogue, by the name of Vax'ildan, played by Liam O'Brien. Vexalia and Vax have a very interesting relationship because again, they played with the whole trope that a lot of half-elves, can have danger with. It's your typical, they were shunned by their father, and I believe their mother died, and she was the only, and that's not a spoiler, they say that in their origins, but their mother died, and she was the only parent who really cared about them. And then you have their father, who acknowledges, they're his children, but it's along the same way of they're not really, I guess you could say they're more treated like his bastards. They're not really, family to him, or at least that's how they start off. Um, so essentially, they've always only ever depended on each other. And you really get that feeling across. I mean, even now they're part of this larger party of adventurers, and yet they still have each other's backs. And you can't help but feel like they, despite their place within Vox Machina. Oh, Vox Machina, that's the name of the party. That they still have this kind of, I want to say, a weird disconnect. Like they are not completely, or at least they start off not completely, merged into the party. It's not until later that they become a lot more comfortable, being a part of them. Vexalia, though, is a lot more of a wildfire compared to Vax'ildan. That's because, well, she's more prone to be impulsive. She gets emotional easily. She even sometimes lets her temper get the better of her. I mean, oh my God, if Vax'ildan is knocked unconscious, Vexalia loses her freaking mind. And if I would say that the most fun that you'll get from Vexalia is when she's interacting with another character named Percy. Sorry, Percy, played by Taliesin Jaffe. Percy and Vex have this long will they, won't they thing going, which that's another thing I love about Critical Role, is that these characters actually have relationships, even romances, and it's not weird, I've seen a lot of, I've described to people before about how awkward it can get if you're either, if someone's character basically tries to force you into a relationship, how weird it can get, or if, there starts to be, sparks flying between you and another character, another player's character. It can be a little weird outside of the table, Not that I've actually ever done this outside a Little Baddie, but, whatever. So what I'm trying to say, though, is that Vex and Percy have a very realistic romance. From day one, maybe, they're little, they kind of look at each other a little bit more, but towards the end of the game, they're basically together. Oh, shoot, spoiler alert. But it's I guess not really a spoiler, because it's how they get there that makes their character so freaking fascinating. And so on that note, I'll go over to Vax'ildan, played again by Liam O'Brien. It's funny too, because the voice that Liam O'Brien uses for Vax'ildan, it sounds very similar to War from Darksiders. I mean, it's easy for that because that's practically his voice. So it's kind of fun for me listening to Vax's voice and just kind of grinning as I think of this hulking hooded figure with his giant Chaos Eater blade. Sorry, I digress. So Vax'ildan is the rogue, as his tagline is dagger, 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 where he obviously is all about coming up and shanking, biatches from behind. But the thing about Vax that makes him interesting is that eventually he starts to start dabbling in powers that are beyond his comprehension. He gets a little over his head, and he knows this. Like, he acknowledges that this is stuff far above his pay grade, and there's really he spends a lot of the I think this happens probably around the second story arc, where he basically begins this long internal journey of trying to find out whether or not this path he has set himself on inadvertently is what he wants out of life, Excuse me. But another thing is that not only does Vax'ildan have his protectiveness towards his sister to the point where he has a very intense heart-to-heart with Percy, where he essentially tells Percy, if you hurt her, or if something you do hurts her, nothing will stop me from killing you. And you could just feel the tension there. I mean, it's just these two guys sitting at a table talking, but you just can't help but almost feel a little, like, nervous, you know? Another thing that is cool about Vax is that he and Grog, they have kind of like a friendly rivalry, you know, the sneaky skulks in the shadows guy versus the frontliner, you know. These guys already, their behaviors and their combat types are so different, and yet whenever they get together, they still, like, they don't clash in a hostile way. It's more like a series of pranks. You know, they have this ongoing prank war that, like, whenever there's any downtime within the party, you can't help but get excited because you're just thinking, oh man, what kind of shenanigans are these two guys going to get up to? I mean, granted, Vaxel Dan, I would say when he first starts the game, he's a little, he's not the, you know, he's the rogue. That's basically how I'll describe it. He talks to his sister, and he's a part of the party. It's not until later, and I want to say, like, again, a lot of stuff happens in the second story arc, but I think that's when Vax started to come out on his own, you know. His character became a little bit more interesting. There you go. Just because I like Liam O'Brien doesn't mean I'm biased, and I'm going to say, hey, his character is perfect. So then we'll, from there, I guess, you know, I've been mentioning Percy a lot, so we'll go over to Percy. Percy, played again by Taliesin Jaffe. He is the gunslinger of the party. His backstory involves he was the prince, he was the prince of this royal family, but he was one of the, he was way down the line of succession, to the point where, in his mind, there was no way he was ever going to inherit the throne. So it was described that he focused on, like, science and alchemy, you know, the kind of thing that his parents and his siblings weren't really, you know, getting into. This was kind of his way of, you know, coming out into his own, you know. But then a couple of nobles called the Briarwoods stage a coup within the castle, takes out his whole family, and leaves only him alive. He then describes that night, Percy had a dream about a smoky figure approaching him, you know, offering him vengeance for the death of his family. And it's described that from that point, Percy started building his first gun. And that's where he is now. Percy, he uses, I believe I don't know if he has one or two of them, but he does have he uses the pepper box, which is basically a, old school version of a revolver, like even more old school than, like, you know, like a Colt kind of thing. He has Bad News, which is a big freaking rifle that he can fire, and it's so powerful that it actually causes him to skid back a couple of feet. Like, it is, like, the way they describe the power of Bad News, it's kind of exciting whenever you hear that they're going to use him. Let me see. It's to the point, though, with Percy, his character's backstory becomes essential to actually one of their adventures. The Briarwood story arc is by far my favorite in the whole series. There's a lot of drama, there's a lot of amazing role-playing moments, and I would say that the Briarwoods are among the best villains of the whole series. They're so good that, spoiler alert, they do come back later in the series. From there, okay, I'll jump over to Matthew Mercer's real-life wife, Marisha Ray. She plays Keyleth, I believe she's a half-elf. I mean, I'm sorry if I got that wrong, but she is a druid who is on a pilgrimage essentially to unite the four tribes, you know, the Air Ashari, the Fire Ashari, the Water Ashari, and the Earth Ashari. If you're kind of getting some vibes here, yes, she has come out and said this is heavily inspired by Avatar: The Last Airbender. Now, Keyleth, Okay, I'm sorry automatically to any Keyleth fans out there, but I'm sorry, Keyleth is one of my least favorite characters of the party. I'm not saying she's bad. I'm just saying that it seems a little bit like uh what's the way to put it? Keyleth is kind of a drama queen sometimes. A lot of situations, okay, like for example, if something really bad happens, Grog will be, oh, I can't believe that, or Pike will be, oh, I can't believe, what is happening? And Keyleth will drop her staff, bawling her eyes out, no, how could this happen? No, the gods have abandoned us. Again, I know I'm kind of, pushing it a little bit, but that's kind of how I feel. She's so emotional sometimes that honestly, and another thing is that she's emotional and she has a very bad habit of monologuing, to the point where sometimes I'll be listening and just be like, okay, come on, Marisha, we get it. Your character's cool. Now, can we go? But I would also say that unlike a lot of other people's quests, I mean, everyone has a side quest that Matthew Mercer just perfectly weaves into the larger narrative. So you have, Travis, or you have Groggs's herd. You have Pikes's own personal commitments to Serenre. You have, excuse me, you have Percy's quest for revenge. You have Vaxel Dan's, internal struggles. And then there's Keyleth's, pilgrimage, which sometimes it feels like, okay, sometimes it feels like directly ahead of them is the big city, the place they need to go to continue the story. But over there, far to the west, is the next Ashari tribe. And so the party will take, they'll turn a 90-degree angle, go down, and they'll just do this Ashari mission. And this can take up like a whole couple of sessions. So essentially like 8 to 10 hours of gameplay. And yes, it's just, I'm sorry, I just can't get really into it. I think I've even skipped an episode before just because I read up that it was, again, another Ashari episode. I mean, the Fire Ashari do come in very important later in the series. Again, I won't spoil it, but I felt like the moment Matthew Mercer did that, it was so that, to basically, it was so that for once, Keyleth can be a little more interesting. But once again, there's a lot of moments where, like, okay, for example, there's a conversation they have where Keyleth and the whole party are talking to someone who has personally harmed Keyleth. Like, they've done some kind of, emotional blow to her. The way that Keyleth is played here, like, I get it, she's temperamental. She just wants to rip this guy's head off. But it is like Marisha Ray just took all of the energy and she took that energy, put the spotlight on her, and just dominated the conversation for like a good 10 to 15 minutes. And no, it didn't go anywhere. Like I said, she has a problem with monologuing. So Keyleth is just going on with this, you will regret the day you were born kind of thing. And I'm just, we get it. Keyleth is mad. Can we see how everyone else is reacting? Because this isn't just about you, So, I know there are people out there who are Keyleth fans, but I'm just not a fan. I mean, heck, I found Marisha Ray's character in the Mighty Nine, the second campaign, Beauregard. She is 10 times more interesting than Keyleth. I mean, even when the story started to wrap up, I couldn't get into it with Keyleth. I'm so sorry, guys. And I guess the last on this list, at least of the regular players, is Sam Riegel. Sam, he's not just the bard. He plays a gnome bard named Scanlan Shorthold, right? Is that right? Again, sorry if I got that wrong. I don't really have my notes in front of me. So Scanlan is the bard. He's the comic relief, and he's the unofficial leader of Vox Machina. Although, I'll get into this later, but promotions for their series kind of point to the point to more of the he is, you know. So Scanlan, I would say I know a lot. Again, he's another huge fan favorite. People love him. And Sam Riegel, he's such a great guy. He has such an addictive energy, and the fact that every time he does a bardic performance, he literally takes a song, like an actual pop song, and he'll do on the spot a spoof of it, and they're almost always hilarious. You know, here I am, you know, on the job listening to Critical Role, and I'm trying my best not to crack up, you know, while he somehow is turning, you know, Shake It Off into about a rogue stabbing somebody. You know, it's so out there, but that's what I love about this character. He is another archetype. He is the bard, you know, the suave, casual, charismatic lone wolf who likes to, you know, put his moves on the ladies, you know if I mean, you know. But the thing about Scanlan is, again, this is another one of those, he is a stereotype, but he's played in a way to where he is interesting. And even during there's even been a few times where Scanlan has even, left Vox Machina. You know, some, internal struggles have caused him to walk away before. And granted, that's more so Sam Riegel could then... it's usually because Sam Riegel has commitments outside the show, so he has to step away. Or one time when he brought in 2 completely new characters, which, unfortunately, I haven't watched the show far enough to get to that. I'm so sorry, guys. So Scanlan is... Scanlan is obvious. Like I said, he's the fan favorite, the comic relief. Sometimes his energy can be a little bit much. I would say it's not, because obviously not all of the jokes land, which is really hard to do. I'm not going to bash Sam Riegel for this, because it is so hard to come up with comedy on the spot. So him being able to make people laugh as it is just shows what a great charismatic guy he is in real life. But obviously not all the jokes land. And I don't know why, but I kind of find it a little tacky that he can use a lightning bolt spell and he insists that it comes out of his crotch. It's okay, it's funny, I guess, but, after the first couple of times, it kind of loses its appeal. And I guess I'll just address the elephant in the room here. Some fans who've watched outside, or hell, even they watched the first episode, they'll know an actor, Orion Akaba, who played a dragonborn wizard named Tiberius Stormwind. I'll just come out and say it. If there's any character who I dislike more than Keyleth, which again, I'm not saying I hate Keyleth, I'm just saying, she doesn't deserve as much praise as everyone else. If anyone deserves more ire, it is Tiberius. Because I will commend Critical Role on one thing. They cut that guy out of their party fairly quickly. Tiberius was only with them for one adventure, where they entered the Underdark and had to battle, Illithids and, ultimately facing down the great beholder Kavarn. But this whole time, although Tiberius isn't useless, let me just say that. But the problem with Tiberius was, I always had this impression that he felt like he was the main character. I mean, that's what I mean by that guy. It's that one player who thinks that their character is vastly superior to everyone else's, that the spotlight should always be on them. It's to the point where Tiberius has even gone so far as to announce himself as the leader of Vox Machina, much to Scanlan's annoyance. And Tiberius tries so hard to be the brains of the operation, but he's just not clever enough. He's not wise enough. In fact, a lot of the times, Tiberius comes off more as, not an idiot, but someone who doesn't understand social cues. And it's not like that was the way that Orion played him, or that Orion wanted him to come off as. It is, his very storyline is very much reminiscent of that guy. Their character is a Mary Sue. They're the best at what they do. They were the youngest graduate of the Mage Academy, baffling the superiors, oh my goodness, how is this possible? That he's on a great quest that could one day change history itself. And that's kind of what is his whole backstory. He was looking for these artifacts and very much wanted to find them all. It's described that, the instructors and professors that he turned to for help were, oh, this is preposterous. These are things of myth. Again, because Tiberius needs to come off as the smartest man in the room. Or I guess the smartest dragon in the room. But the problem is that, again, Tiberius never came off as that intelligent. But I would say okay, that may be one thing. But you guys are, those who don't know who Tiberius is, you're probably thinking, okay, come on, Master Mimic, you're being a little harsh on this guy, Okay, let me just say one thing. Orion was a really notorious metagamer. If there is anything that gets on my nerves, it's when a player metagames. So when basically he hears that an enemy has an anti-magic field, the strength of Tiberius, Orion one time just skipped an entire fight. He didn't once come in to help Vox Machina. I think until the very end when he swooped in, probably to try and gain some, hey, look, I did something, But it was, I just remember, because I was listening to it, I was listening to the podcast. If anyone in the group despised Orion, it was Marisha Ray. She has gotten into fights with this guy. I mean, both in and out of character. For example, there was an incident where they're about to go on a quest, and they go out to a bar, and they are literally right about to leave. And Orion has Tiberius go and get drunk, and really plastered, So when he comes out going, oh, let's go on the quest, the first thing that the people are saying, I think it was Grog was with him. He's like, hey, Keyleth, can you heal him just so that, we can, go on with the story and go on with the mission? And Keyleth went off on Tiberius, saying, look, man, I only have a certain amount of spells per day. We're about to go on a freaking quest, and I don't have the resources to pull you out of your slump. So you just freaking deal with it. And it was, I remember, even though it was in character, you could feel some of that, that outside anger kind of pouring in there. It was, I know there's a clear divide between player and character, but in this case, that divide was paper thin, But from what I heard, Matthew Mercer and Orion had their, they had a falling out outside of the, again, they haven't really said exactly what happened. This is just a rumor, but apparently they had creative differences. I mean, I would say maybe it's because Tiberius tried to take over as leader of Vox Machina. I'm just saying that. But eventually Orion walked away, and Tiberius was, I'll say this about Matthew Mercer. He dealt with this if this was a situation where he, maybe he and Orion had an argument, maybe there was some bitterness there, Matthew didn't let it linger. In fact, I would say Tiberius had a very heartfelt send-off, and I just hearing it actually made me think, well, sure, I mean, a part of me kind of wishes that, the more petty part of me thinks that Tiberius shouldn't have, had such a good, good farewell. But again, these guys are friends. That's the thing that you get from these guys. They are not just, voice actors contractually obligated to sit at this table every Thursday night and play. These guys are friends. It's described that they play D&D on each other's birthdays. That's just so beautiful. I love it. And outside of the main cast, you get a few the guest stars. I would say a couple of ones of note are Will Friedle. He played Terry McGinnis in Batman Beyond, and he's by far my favorite guest character. He plays Kashaw Vesh, a human cleric, who his backstory is he is technically married to a dark goddess. And I'm not going to go any further than that. If you guys are interested and you haven't seen the show, you're going to have to listen to it. Let's see. This guy's name. Joe Manganiello. Again. For those who don't know who that guy is, he is playing... I guess I'll go to his more recent stuff. He plays Deathstroke in the DCEU. He was also in True Blood, and he's been in a few other things. But he played Archon the Cruel, a red dragonborn paladin / barbarian. And let's just say there is a moment with Archon involving Vox Machina that automatically made him legendary. Again, I won't spoil it, but Joe, holy crap, you know how to steal the show. A few other people that were on the show were Felicia Day and Will Wheaton. They, Felicia Day, she's adorable, okay? I'm just going to say it. She's an adorable human being. Like, even if she's just, whenever she's on, like, Instagram, and she's posting just little videos, about her, I just can't help being like, you are too adorable. You are a grown woman. You're just so cute. And she plays her character the exact same way. Like, when her character was introduced, I remember thinking, aw, she's like Felicia Day. And then I started listening to the voice, and I'm like, oh, it is Felicia Day, oh my god. Will Wheaton, I can't even remember his character's name. But Will Wheaton, he's the greatest impact I would say he had on me was it made me realize that the Wheaton curse is real and it is contagious. So if I am playing D&D with any of these guys in the future, I'm sorry, Will, I don't think I'll be inviting you to my table if I'm a party member. Sorry, man. Well, there's not really a whole lot more to say. I guess I can talk about the Legends of Vox Machina. For some people who somehow don't know, Critical Role started a Kickstarter to it started off as they wanted to get an animated short off the ground that would have just featured their characters. Obviously, all the voice actors were coming back to reprise the roles, and I imagine Matthew Mercer he'll still be the GM, but he'll also be playing probably a million NPCs. But to my shock, and to the shock of basically everybody who even knew Critical Role, their Kickstarter, they basically went from asking for, I think, God, it was like, I want to say like 50,000. They got over $1 million to make this series. And again, that is not even the final number. They got several $1 million from this Kickstarter. So now, The Legends of Vox Machina went from an animated short to an animated series. And last time I heard, they got picked up by Amazon Prime for a second season. They're not even done with the first season yet, and they're already getting a second season. I mean, normally that's a pet peeve of mine. I hate when shows get a second season without feeling like they deserved it. But, my God, that is just so freaking brilliant. I can't help but, applaud them, That is... Wow. So, what are my feelings about Legends of Vox Machina? It looks great. The opening cutscene, or the opening credits they showed, their little theme song, looked freaking awesome. I love the energy. I love the fact that everybody is essentially coming back to play their roles. It looks like a lot of fun. If I had to nitpick, I would say now the animation looks fine. It's being animated by Titmouse, who their animation can be, good or not, But here that looks like they're actually throwing in some, like, a lot of effort. I mean, for several $1 million, they should be. But if I had to just make one slight criticism, I would say the animation, it looks good, but I don't know. It's just not... it's not that it looks terrible to me. The characters look fine. It's one of those, I'll just have to watch the actual show and before I give my, my own opinion. And heck, maybe that'll be another episode of Roaring D20s right there, Yeah, Master Mimic's reaction to the pilot episode to, The Legends of Vox Machina. If I needed to say one thing, though, that even without even watching the show, I know I'm not going to like, it's Scanlan's design. He has this little, hair curl in the front, and he has his shirt open, revealing his hairy chest, and I'm sorry, it doesn't look funny. It looks kind of dumb, like oh, hey, look, it's Austin Powers, It's like, I get it, he's meant to be the suave, hey, how you doing, want to come over to my place, that kind of guy. But he doesn't look like somebody who's, ringing in the women, He looks like, if anything, he'd be more of like a Johnny Bravo kind of character, hey, how you doing? Slap, Again, that's just my personal opinion. And I will say this, though, the fact that they did mention that the Briarwoods arc would be featured in the series made it an instant watch for me. I mean, if it wasn't already, I guess I could have said that it went from basically a, I must watch this to, okay, I'll be there when it premieres. Sorry, I love talking about Critical Role. This is the kind of energy I have when Little Batty and I talk about it. And, I'm so thankful for them. Like, other than Stranger Things, which I would say kind of helped... Stranger Things helped introduce Dungeons & Dragons to those who may not have, been well acquainted with the game. But I would say Critical Role has brought together D&D fans in a way that no other series or show or any form of media other than the game itself have ever done before. But this time they did it on a much larger, a much more vast level, Like, I've been in forums, I've been part of fan clubs on, like, Facebook, and just talking to these guys is like, you critters, that's what they're called. You critters, there's a reason why every time I start this show, I say players, gamers, and critters, because you guys are so great. You deserve some special recognition from this show. So, with that being said, this is getting a little long. Obviously, I've just gushed out my love for Critical Role. I can't wait to see them come back. I can't wait to see the adventures of Vox Machina, and, heaven, by the grace of God, I hope that one day I can go to a convention and meet these guys, or even better yet, that I can even be there to play with them someday. Thank you all for listening. I am Master Mimic, and I'll see you all next time. Have a good one.